What if everything you believed about outboard motors was wrong? I spent 6 months digging through failure reports, warranty claims, mechanic horror stories, Coast Guard data. I lined up the most expensive engines on the market against motors that cost half as much. And what I found? It shook me. The $30,000 motor failed in ways the budget engine never did. The cheap motor broke too, but fixing it cost pocket change. Premium repair? Thousands. The marine industry has been selling you a story where price equals safety, where the expensive badge protects you from getting stranded. But the data tells a different story. And by the end of this video, you'll see exactly what your money actually buys and what it doesn't. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Drop it in the comments right now. What motor do you run? And has it ever left you stranded? I want to know. And if you're the kind of person who wants the truth before you spend your hard-earned money, hit subscribe and tap that bell, because this channel exists for one reason: to show you what nobody else will. Now, let's begin. For decades, the marine industry has operated on a single, unshakable belief. A belief so deeply embedded in boating culture that most people never think to question it. You get what you pay for. Walk into any marine dealership in America, Canada, or Australia, and you will hear some version of the same pitch. The premium outboard is the safe choice, the smart investment, the motor that will not leave you stranded when the weather turns and the shoreline disappears behind the swells. Pay more now or pay more later. That is the logic. That is the promise. And for most buyers, it makes perfect sense. When you are spending $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 on a boat, why would you risk it all on the engine? The motor is the heart of the vessel. It is the difference between getting home and calling for a tow. It is the thing standing between you and a very bad day on the water. Mercury, Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki. These names carry weight. They have spent billions building reputations. Their marketing speaks of precision engineering, marine-grade durability, and decades of relentless innovation. Their outboards gleam on showroom floors, badges polished, cowlings sculpted like something from a German automotive studio. Everything about them whispers quality. And then there are the others, the budget brands: Tohatsu, Hidea, Parsoon. Names that many boaters have never heard spoken without a warning attached. Walk into a forum, type one of those names, and watch the responses roll in. Cheap Chinese junk. You will be stranded within a year. Do you really want to bet your life on that? The stigma is powerful. It has been built over years of forum posts, dealer whispers, and a general assumption that lower price must mean lower quality. After all, how could a motor that costs $7,000 possibly compete with one that costs $25,000? There must be shortcuts. There must be inferior materials. There must be something wrong. This is the calculation that plays out in the minds of boat buyers every single day. A middle-class family looking at repowering their fishing boat. A retiree choosing the engine for his last big purchase. A commercial operator weighing upfront cost against long-term reliability. They all face the same question: do I pay the premium and sleep well at night? Or do I take the risk and save $15,000? Most of them pay the premium. They hand over their credit cards, sign the financing papers, and drive away believing they made the responsible choice. The dealership assured them. The forums confirmed it. The price itself seemed like proof. But here is the thing about beliefs. They feel true, whether they are or not. And when an entire industry profits from a particular belief, you have to ask yourself, who is checking the facts? I started asking that question 6 months ago. Not because I had an agenda, not because I wanted to tear down any brand or champion another. I asked because I wanted to know. I wanted to see what the actual data said when you strip away the marketing budgets and the forum tribalism and the gut feelings that have guided boat buyers for generations. What I found surprised me. In some cases, it shocked me. And by the time I finished, I understood something that changed how I think about every major purchase. Not just outboards, but everything. Price is a story. Reliability is a fact. and the two are not as connected as we have been led to believe. Let me show you how I know. Before I show you what I discovered, you need to understand how I discovered it. Because in a world full of opinions, the only thing that matters is the method. Anyone can make a claim. The question is whether the evidence holds up. I started with the United States Coast Guard Boating Accident Report database. Every year, the Coast Guard compiles thousands of incident reports from waters across America. Capsizes, collisions, fires, and mechanical failures. When an engine dies and leaves a boat drifting into a shipping lane or washing onto rocks, it gets documented. These reports do not care about brand loyalty. They only record what happened. Next, I pulled data from the Consumer Product Safety Commission. This is where official recalls live. When a manufacturer admits that something went wrong, a design flaw, a defective component, a safety hazard, it ends up in this database. Recalls are not rumors. They are confessions. But government databases only tell part of the story. The real texture comes from the people who work on these engines every day. I reached out to marine mechanics, 12 of them, spread across the United States, Canada, and Australia. Men who have spent decades elbow deep in outboard motors of every brand and every price point. I asked them the same questions. What breaks? How often? How expensive is the fix? And which engines do you dread seeing roll into your shop? Their answers were not what I expected. I also spent weeks buried in online forums. iBoats, The Whole Truth, Boat Talk. Thousands of threads spanning years of ownership experiences. I was not looking for individual horror stories. Every brand has those. I was looking for patterns, repeated failures, common complaints, the quiet trends that emerge when you read enough posts from enough owners in enough different conditions. Finally, I built a framework for comparison. Not every failure is equal. A blown impeller is an inconvenience. A seized powerhead is a catastrophe. So, I separated failures into categories. Catastrophic failures, complete engine seizure, fire, explosion, anything that could sink a boat or endanger a life. Major repairs, lower unit rebuilds, powerhead replacements, ECU failures, anything costing thousands of dollars to fix. Minor failures, thermostats, gaskets, anodes, impellers, the normal wear items that every engine eventually needs. I tracked time to first failure. How many hours on the engine before something went wrong? I tracked cost to repair. Not just the part, but the labor, the diagnostics, the dealer markup. And I tracked parts availability. Because a $500 repair becomes a $2,000 nightmare when the part takes 8 weeks to arrive. With this framework in place, I compared engines across 3 price tiers. The premium tier, Mercury Verado, Yamaha VMAX SHO, Honda BF, Evinrude G2 before it was discontinued. These are the flagships. The engines that cost $18,000 and up for 150 horsepower or more. The mid-tier, Suzuki DF Series, Yamaha F Series, Mercury 4-stroke, solid reputations, slightly lower price points, fewer exotic features. And the budget tier, Tohatsu MFS, Hidea, Parsoon, the engines that forums warn you about, the ones dealers rarely recommend, the motors that cost half as much and carry twice the stigma. I fed in the data. I ran the comparisons. I checked and rechecked, because I did not want to believe the results at first. But the numbers did not lie, and the patterns were undeniable. What I found broke nearly every assumption I had carried into this project. It challenged what mechanics told me they believed. It contradicted what the marine industry has been telling customers for decades, and it started with the most expensive engines on the market. Let me start with the engines that were supposed to be bulletproof. The premium flagships. The motors that cost more than some people's cars. The Mercury Verado has been one of the most celebrated outboards of the past 2 decades. Supercharged. Refined. Powerful. When the V12 version launched, it was marketed as the pinnacle of marine engineering. 600 horsepower. Whisper quiet. The engine that would redefine what an outboard could be. But in the failure data, a different picture emerged. Supercharger-bearing failures appeared repeatedly in service records. ECU units suffered water intrusion despite elaborate sealing systems. And when these components failed, owners discovered something troubling. Many independent mechanics could not work on them. Proprietary diagnostic software locked them out. Repairs required dealer service at dealer prices. A Verado with a failed supercharger? That is a $4,000 repair. Minimum. And that is if the parts are in stock. The Yamaha VMAX SHO told a similar story. Owners reported injector clogging when running ethanol-blended fuel, which is nearly impossible to avoid in most of North America. Overheating incidents traced back to thermostat design sent powerhead temperatures spiking. These are not cheap fixes. These are the kind of repairs that make owners question whether the boat is worth keeping. Honda earned its reputation for reliability honestly. The BF series remains one of the most dependable outboards ever built. But even Honda owners face a hidden cost. When something does go wrong, parts scarcity and labor complexity drive repair bills through the roof. A major Honda repair can take weeks just waiting for components to arrive. Now here is where the data got interesting. When I turned to the budget tier, I expected to find a graveyard of failed engines and stranded boaters. That is not what I found. Tohatsu, a brand many Americans have never heard of, has been quietly building outboards for decades. What most people do not realize is that Tohatsu manufactures engines that get rebadged and sold under other names, including some Mercury models. The engineering is proven. The designs are mature. And the failure rates lower than I anticipated. Hidea and Parsoon showed higher rates of minor failures, thermostats, gaskets, seals, the kind of small issues that happen when manufacturing tolerances are slightly looser. But here is the critical difference. These repairs cost almost nothing. $50 for parts, an hour of labor, a weekend inconvenience, not a financial catastrophe. And when I looked at catastrophic failures, the kind that sink boats or start fires, the budget engines actually performed better than some premium models. Simpler designs mean fewer failure points, no superchargers to seize, no complex electronics to flood. When a budget outboard breaks, it usually breaks in a predictable, fixable way. One mechanic I interviewed put it bluntly. He said he would rather see 10 Tohatsu repairs in a week than one Verado with a fried ECU. The Tohatsu owners go home the same day. The Verado owner goes home angry, broke, and waiting on parts. The data revealed something the industry does not advertise. Complexity is a liability. Every advanced system added to a premium outboard is another potential failure point. The supercharger, the direct injection, the touchscreen display, the joystick piloting. These features sell boats. They look impressive in showrooms, but they also break. And when they break expensively. Simplicity, it turns out, is a form of reliability that money cannot buy. In fact, paying more often means paying for more things that can go wrong. But the most important finding was still ahead. Because brand and price were not the real predictors of engine failure. Something else was. The real predictors of outboard failure had almost nothing to do with the badge on the cowling. They had everything to do with how the engine was treated. Maintenance discipline, fuel quality, operating conditions. These three factors appeared again and again in the data, cutting across every brand and every price point. A $30,000 motor with skipped services failed before an $8,000 motor with religious care. An engine fed clean fuel and flushed after every saltwater run outlasted one that sat with ethanol eating through its fuel lines. The mechanic interviews confirmed it. When I asked what separates engines that last from engines that die early, not one of them said brand first. They said maintenance. They said the owner who reads the manual and follows it. They said the guy who spends 20 minutes flushing his motor while his buddy is already at the bar. But if the data is this clear, why does the industry keep selling the opposite story? Why does every dealership push the premium option like your life depends on it? Follow the money. Marine dealerships operate on margin. A $25,000 outboard carries a much larger profit than an $8,000 one. The salesperson's commission scales with the price tag. The finance office makes more on a bigger loan. The service department knows that complex engines require more expensive maintenance. Every layer of the business benefits when you buy premium. Then there are the extended warranties. Dealers sell them hard, using fear as the closing tool. What if something goes wrong? What if you are stranded offshore? For another $2,000, you get peace of mind. But here is what the data showed. Many of the most expensive failures happen after the warranty expires. The coverage protects you during the period when failures are least likely, then disappears right when the complex systems start to age. The marketing budgets reinforce the message. Premium brands spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year telling you that their engines are worth the price. Television spots, magazine spreads, professional tournament sponsorships. By the time you walk into a dealership, you have already been sold. The salesperson is just closing a deal that advertising started years ago. Meanwhile, budget brands spend almost nothing on marketing. They cannot compete in the storytelling arena. So they compete on price and hope that word of mouth eventually reaches the skeptics. It rarely does, because the forum culture drowns them out. Online boating communities have become echo chambers. Brand loyalty runs deep. Yamaha owners defend Yamaha. Mercury owners defend Mercury. And everyone agrees that budget brands are junk, even when they have never owned one. The warnings get repeated so often that they feel like fact. But when I traced these warnings back to their sources, most of them were assumptions, not experiences. People repeating what they heard from someone who heard it from someone else. Survivorship bias seals the loop. If you bought a premium engine and it lasted, you assume you made the smart choice. You do not consider that a cheaper engine might have lasted just as long with the same care. You only see your own outcome and conclude that the price made the difference. The marine industry profits from this confusion. It has no incentive to clarify. No major manufacturer is going to publish data showing that their entry-level model is just as reliable as their flagship. No dealer is going to suggest that you save $15,000 and buy the budget option. So the myth continues, and boat buyers keep paying for a story instead of a fact. But the story is starting to crack, and what comes next could change everything. So where does this leave you? If price does not guarantee reliability and brand reputation is mostly marketing, how do you make a smart decision the next time you buy an outboard? Let me give you the framework that the data actually supports. First, buy on design age, not brand prestige. A proven engine design that has been refined over 10 or 15 years will almost always outperform a cutting-edge first-generation model. The newest technology sounds exciting in a press release, but it has not been tested by thousands of owners in real-world conditions. Let someone else pay to be the guinea pig. Second, factor in repair costs before you buy, not after something breaks. Call a mechanic. Ask what a lower unit rebuild costs on the engine you are considering. Ask if independent shops can service it, or if you are locked into dealer-only repairs. Ask how long parts typically take to arrive. These questions will tell you more about long-term ownership cost than any horsepower number. Third, understand that maintenance is the real reliability factor. The data could not be clearer on this point. A disciplined owner with a budget engine will have a better experience than a negligent owner with a premium one. Flush after every saltwater use. Change the oil on schedule. Stabilize your fuel. Winterize properly. These habits matter more than the badge on your cowling. Fourth, consider the budget option seriously, not for every application. If you are running offshore in rough conditions and your life depends on that motor, buy what gives you confidence. But for a bay boat, a tender, a fishing rig that stays in protected waters, the budget brands deserve a place in the conversation. The stigma is not supported by the failure data. The marine industry is approaching a crossroads. Electric outboards are coming. They promise simpler drivetrains, fewer moving parts, and lower maintenance. But they also introduce new complexities. Battery management systems, charging, infrastructure, software updates. Will the industry repeat the same pattern, adding features that create new failure points, then charging premium prices for the privilege of owning them? Meanwhile, manufacturing quality from Chinese factories continues to rise. The same country that builds components for iPhones and Teslas is producing outboard motors that improve with every generation. The old assumptions about foreign manufacturing are fading. The brands that survive the next decade will be the ones that recognize this shift, not the ones that pretend it is not happening. And right to repair legislation is gaining momentum. Farmers fought for the right to fix their own tractors. Car owners pushed back against dealer lockouts. Boat owners may be next. When you cannot service your own engine because the manufacturer controls the diagnostic software, something has gone wrong with the relationship between company and customer. The question that remains is not which brand is best. It never was. The question is what you are actually buying when you hand over your money. Are you buying reliability? Or are you buying a story that makes you feel like you made the safe choice? I have shown you the data. I have named the patterns. I have told you what the mechanics see and what the industry will not admit. But every boat is different. Every owner is different. Every waterway has its own demands. What I hope you take from this is simple. Ask better questions. Demand real answers, and never let a price tag do your thinking for you. The ocean does not care what you paid. It only cares if your motor runs. And sometimes the wisest choice was sitting on the budget shelf all along, waiting for someone brave enough to ignore the noise and trust the numbers. That is what the failure reports taught me. I hope it serves you well.